So today's daf is daf Vav, and we're going to start at the end of the first line on the daf, Hatzad Hashava Shebehen. And the Mishnah back at the beginning of the Masechet establishes that Darkon Lahazik Shmirosan Olecha Ukshehizik Chav Hamazik L'Sham Tashlumi Nezek B'Meitav Ha'oretz. So the Gemara asks the following question: Lasuye Mai. Why is it that once the Mishnah had listed all the other Nezikin, how and why would it go ahead and add this Tzad HaShava Shebehen? Unless the Tzad HaShava is coming to add another situation, another scenario where Yechayev Amar Abai Lasuye Avno Sakino Maso Shenicha B'Rosh Gago V'Naflu B'Ruach Mitzuya V'Ziku. He left a mazik, whether it's a knife or a bundle, on top of his gag, and of course a normal velocity wind came along, blew the object, the package, over the top of the ledge, and somebody was damaged. Hechidami, says the Gemara. Why do you need a tzad hashava? Mimonafsha. If the Evan hit someone or some animal on its way down, then Eish, Hainu Eish. That's exactly what Eish is. This is the classic told of Eish, which means that you put something with a koach achem uravo, and the mazik was now brought to the nizak, and it was mazikim as a result of koach acher, in this case the ruach. Maishna eish the koach acher me'uravo umamoncha shmiras alecha haninami koach acher me'uravahen umamoncha ushmiras alecha. So this doesn't require a tzad hashava shebehen. This is exactly the av of eish, because it's koach acher me'uravo. Ve'ela, but if you're going to say basa denaichi, it wasn't that the wind brought the force of the mazik directly, the package, or the knife directly onto the nizak, but rather it landed on the ground, and then the person was nizak. Then the Gemara is going to analyze that that's bar. Idaf garinu, if he was mafkir, the evan or the sak in the masa after it hit the ground, then Bain LeRav, Ubain LeShmuel. We both agree unanimously, Rav and Shmuel, Hainu Bar. Because according to the Shita of Rav, there is no bailus over a bar, but, I'm sorry, in the case where he's mafkir, then he is Chayav Mishum Bar. No Maishna Bar, Shekain tchilas asiyas lenezek v'imon choshmiras alecha ninami tchilas asiyas lenezek imon choshmiras alecha. This case where you have a mazik of bar, and through the power of the wind, it creates a bar. Then you should be chayav mishum bar. Now, if he was not mafkir and he retains ownership of it, then Rav Shita is that he's not chayav mishum bar. But l'shmuel di'amar kulan mi bar lamadnu. Every takola, even if you still retain ownership, it's considered a bar, is hainu bar. And the Mefarshim learn from this Gemara that according to Rav, we really would understand that we need a tzad hashava in order to derive that even in a case of loaf karinu, he would be chayev, and he'd be chayev midin keren. But again, this is not exactly keren because it's not a live animal that damaged. So you would need to offer a tzad hashava between bar and keren. But the Gemara wants to know how to work this out according to Shmuel. How is Shmuel going to interpret the Mishnah of tzad hashava shebehen? And the Gemara answers li olam daf karinu. You'll tell me if he was mafkir, then Bain LeRav, Bain LeShmuel, that's bar. Lo damu lebar, it's not similar to bar. Ma lebar shekein koach acher me'urabo. When you dig a bar, you yourself create the bar. So the asiyas hamazik was accomplished through the person himself. But Tomer Bahani, but in the case where Avno Sakina Maso Baruch Gagon, as long as it's up on the roof, it's not a mazik. So you're not responsible for what we call asiyas amazik. It's basically the wind that created the mazik. Norvas eish tochiach, because in the case of eish, you don't have the asiyas amazik without the ruach. But malaysia came dakolelach lahazik. On the other hand, eish is something that goes out and damages. So we have two chumras. We have the chumrah in bar, because he himself dug the bar, and that's called asiyas amazik. On the other hand, we have a chumrah in eish, because eish is darko lelech lahazik. And therefore, how do we derive the conclusion that avno sakina maso, which is number one, it's not he that did the asiyas hamazik, but what created the mazik was the ruach. And number two, does not have the chumrah and the quality of dako leilach lahazik. But bar tochiach, because bar is chayiv, even though it's not dako leilach lahazik. And eish tochiach, even though there was no asiyas hamazik, ella al yidei ruach koach hachamurabo. Is chazar adin, we see that the two chumras, the one chumrah of bar, that's not koach hafupa, that you were responsible for asiyas hanazik, and that is not going to be gorim the chiv, because by eish it was the ruach. And if you'll tell me, well, eish has the chumrah that it's dakolech lahazik bar tochia, so we have it tzad shava, and for that we're going to derive the conclusion that avno sakina maso shenicha brosh gago is chayev because of a combination between bar and eish. And here there's a long discussion in the Brisker Rav, when you derive something from the tzad shava, which dinim will apply. Do we apply the dinim of eish? For example, eish is part of Talmud. Or do we apply the dinim of bar, and therefore bar is part of for other v'kelim? So that's a long discussion in the Brisker Rav. Now we're going to see alternative approaches, many different alternative approaches to explain the Mishnah of Tzad HaShavah. Rava Amar La'asuye bar misgalgel b'ragli odem ragli b'hem. A person left something of a bar, let's say an even or something else in Rishus HaRabim. In that place, it didn't cause any damage. But an animal went by, or a person went by, and like we say in soccer, kicked the ball, and now the even rolled to another location, and there somebody slipped on the even and broke something. So the Gemara asks again, Hechi Domi. The Afkarinu is Bein Rav Bein Lishmuel Hainu Bar. Whether you accept Rav Shita that it has to be Hefker, or Shmuel Shita that in the case of Hefker it's certainly a bar. Maishna Bar Shekain Tchilas Asiyol Lenezek Ushmirosan Alecha. Haninami Tchilas Asiyosan Lenezek Ushmirosan Alecha. In other words, you put down the bar in Rishus HaRabim, you created a mazik. Ella, what are you going to tell me the law of Karinu? Okay, but Shmuel says that even if you own the bar, you still chayv mishum bar. Is l'Shmuel di'omer l'kulon mibaro l'madnu, even if it's takola with he was not mafkir the takola, he's still chayv mishum bar hainu bar. Liolam daf Karinu lo dami lebar ma lebar shekei ma'isam garmulo. When he dug the bar, or he placed the bar right here in Rishus HaRabim biyadayim, he was Yotzer, he was the Oses Ahezek. Tomar Bahani, but here, Ein Maisam Garmelo, it's only the person who came by, or the animal that kicked the Evan from place X to place Y, that's what made the bar into a bar amazik. But Shar Yochia, because in the case of Shar, it wasn't the Maisa Bailim that were going the Hezek. It was the fact that he owns the shor. He's got a bailus over the moment, but it was the shor itself that did the hezek. As therefore, I can derive the conclusion of bara misgalgal being chayah. So now we have another pircha, malish shor shekain dakolech lahazek. Because in this case, if he had left, if the evan had remained in its original location, it wouldn't have been mazik. So it's not dakolech lahazek. But bar tochia, because bar is not darko leilach lahazik. The nisa comes to the mazik. V'chazer adin lo roizeh keroizeh, meaning that each one of these two chumras, the chumrah of shar, that it's darko leilach lahazik, the chumrah of bar, that it's ma'asav kagarmala. Neither of these two chumras are gorem l'chiyuv hezek, because if you're going to say, well, bar is ma'asav garmalo, I'm going to ask you about shar, because shar is not ma'asav garmalo. And if you'll argue it, shar is darko leilach lahazik, whereas bar is not darko leilach lahazik, and yichai mishum bar. So therefore, we can derive the conclusion that tzad hashava is darko lahazik b'shmiras and alecha. Rav Bar Rav Omer, I have another suggestion. La suye adesanya kol elusha omru poskin biboseyem v'garfim ma'oroseyem v'mosach hamei lemeshus v'mosach shom yesh lemeshus v'yafal pi shebeshus nevertheless miziku chayom l'shalem. So we have now a discussion about whether the Chachamim would permit you to put the refuse out in the Rishus HaRabim. And here we make a distinction between the winter and the summer. If it's Bimos HaChamah, the Rabbanan are not going to allow you to put your refuse, which is called Biboseim, and open it up. It's like a gutter which brings down all the schmutz, and it enters into Rishus HaRabim. They're not going to allow you to do that during the summer months, because during the summer months the streets have to be clean. And Garfin Boseim, we're not going to allow you to take your zevel, your fertilizer, out of the various subterranean ma'aros and bring them into Rishus HaRabim. But b'mosak shamim, when it's full of rain, and anyway the streets are absolutely filthy during the rainy season, then yesh lem reshus. However, even though the Chacham allowed you to do so, they told you that if somebody gets damaged, for example, a shar or chamar, as they walk in Rishus HaRabim, they get damaged by these bibosein or garfim osein, they chayom l'shalom, you still have to pay. Hechi dami, ibahari dekazli maski. If as the water, this dirty water was coming down from the gutters, and it damaged someone, cholchohu, then when he actually opened the gutters that are normally closed, that's called kolcho shel adam. That's adam amazim. I don't need a tzad shova for that. Ela basar denayich, but rather the case is where the waters, the dirty waters, came down onto the ground, and then somebody was damaged. Hechi dami. Again, the old question of bar. What is bar? Here too, it's tchilas asiyas l'nezik v'moncha shmiras alecha. Ella delaf karinu. If he retained ownership on the BBO, so on the dirty water, then at least according to Shmuel, is kulam mibar lamadnu. The olam dafkarina below dami lebar. No one would allow you to dig a bar in Rishus HaRabim. And Malabar Shekhet Shelo B'Rishus, why is he chayav? Because he violated the laws of Rishus HaRabim. Tomar Bahani, but in the case of Bibosein, where we give him permission to open the Bibosein and let the mayim go into Rishus HaRabim, Dibershus Bezdin, he did it, and therefore it was not similar to bar, which is Shelo B'Rishus. So again, the Gemara is saying that maybe the reason why you're chai mishum bar, the chumrah that generates the chiyuv bar, is Shelo B'Rishus, and that chiyuv, that machayev of Shelo B'Rishus does not apply in the case of Hotkin, Bibosein, and Garfim Orsei. So we need a tzad hasham. Now, what is the tzad hasham over here? So we actually stopped prematurely in the middle of the Gemara because although we cannot derive it from bar, because in bar he had no rishus to dig the bar, here we gave him rishus, but we can add shar into the picture. And that's going to be the Gemara here on Amud Beis.